And with that, welcome to America's Heroes Group with our Roundtable partner, the Jesse Brown VA. October is Breast Cancer, Mental Health, Natural Disability, and Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Today is Saturday, October 14th, 2023. Our host is Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith, and our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scouts Honor Productions. And we have our panelists with us. Maiza Lopez is a clinical social worker certified and an Illinois certified domestic violence professional. Maiza serves as an intermediate partner violence assistance program coordinator at the Jesse Brown VA. And Sabrina Rowe, she's a licensed clinical social worker, certified alcohol drug counselor, and domestic violence professional with over 20 years of experience. How you guys doing today?
Hi, good.
So tell us, Sabrina, start us off a little bit. Tell us about what you do and also a little bit about the Domestic Violence Awareness Program at the Jesse Brown VA.
Hello. First of all, I want to say thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to spread awareness regarding domestic violence and intimate partner violence. Like you stated, my name is Sabrina Rowe, and I am an IPV coordinator at the Jesse Brown Medical Center. And basically, I provide supportive services to individuals who have experienced violence or for someone who utilizes violence.
Now,
we provide supportive I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I just want to say we provide some supportive services and resources for both the medical center internally and for community-based organizations externally.
All right. Misa, am I pronouncing your name right?
Hi, yeah, it's pronounced Misa.
All right, perfect.
Thank you for asking.
So tell us about how important the program is. Why is this program important to the Jesse Brown VA and also to the community at large?
You know, the program was, the directive was actually signed in January of 2019, after piloting programs in various VAs across the country to identify need and identify supportive services. Started back in 2012. It was determined that veterans needed more support, services and assistance regarding intimate partner violence, primarily because, in my opinion, if we consider that the general population, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner, research suggests that veterans are twice as likely. And so we began the program here at Jesse Brown. At the end of 2018, we built a robust program and staff. And we not only work with veterans, we work with their civilian partners, caregivers, staff members. So we can work with a pretty wide range of individuals in our setting.
I saw on a CBS News special, they mentioned, this was a couple of years ago, they said since 2015 there were 100,000 cases of domestic violence or abuse in the military. That seems alarming, especially for our military forces only about 2 million strong. What are some of the key things that you think is driving this? Is domestic abuse about anger management, or is it more sinister, like trying to control somebody? What is it all about? That's for either one of you, Sabrina or Misa.
It could be a plethora of things, Sean. We all know we are individuals that learn from what's in our environment or what we're taught, we're conditioned. A lot of it is linked to mental health disorders. A lot individuals that enroll in the military, they're taught for what? War. And that's not an excuse. However, sometimes when you're transitioning back into civilian life and you're accustomed to certain type of behaviors, you have to learn and adapt to a new form of behavior. So we try to minimize the stigma of guilt and shame, and it's not just, the military experience. It could be a lot of times mental health, substance abuse, physical health. There are so many factors that contribute to aggression and violence.
Is there anything to add to that? It seems like violence begets violence. So when I think about that, I think about like Sabrina mentioned, being in the military and being trained to be violent, being trained to conduct warfare, and then bringing that home, and then cases like PTSD, where someone might have anger triggers, but that might cause them to bring that rage home. Tell us more about that from your perspective.
Yeah, so thanks for asking that question. It's something we talk because we do work with both individuals who experience violence and individuals who use violence. And I think something that we try to do very well in our program in this setting is to pay attention to veteran-centric factors that impact and influence how we manage conflict, right? So Sabrina pointed out, which is very correct, if our families of origin or what we know in terms of how to interact in interpersonal relationships, how to manage or engage in conflict, right? That's kind of our baseline. So if we, come from a place of origin that there's a lot of yelling or a lot of aggression, we've learned that that's how you interact in conflict, right? But in military settings, we have a lot of compassion and empathy that in service, and I'm not a veteran, but I grew up in a military household. So, in that aspect, I am familiar with military culture on some level. In service, folks are trained. I had a veteran who told me once that he was trained to do what we were taught our whole lives not to do, right? And so in that setting, aggression and level of violence is necessary to keep people safe, right? And like Sabrina had mentioned, that doesn't always translate well when you return to civilian life. We also, as you had mentioned, Sean, thinking about the other veteran-centric factors that impact interpersonal relationships, like symptoms of post-traumatic stress, so when we think about decreased frustration tolerance, increased anger, based on experiences, loss of trust or moral distress, using coping tools that may not be healthy or safe, right? But that's what somebody might have available to them at that time. And just the stress of, military life separation and isolation and family life stress. I think all those things can be contributing factors that impact and influence conflict in interpersonal relationships.
So, Sabrina, how do you take someone who's going through these types of issues, who's the aggressor, and change that and turn that around, to deprogram that tendency to lean towards violence or lean towards? And also explain to me, if you will, is there a difference between a person who is abusive versus violent, or are they one and the same thing?
Well, how do you help an individual that utilizes violence or aggression? You use a trauma-informed approach. You try not to point fingers. You try not to shame them. You try not to judge them. You try to understand where it's coming from. And you try to help them be involved in the healing process so they can develop awareness about their triggers and what they would like to do better. Because, just for you and I, in my own experience, if I have a poor behavior and if someone comes to me aggressively in a way that's accusing me of this behavior, I might get defensive. But if they come in a way, say, Sabrina, it appears to me, or it seems, or what can I do to assist you or support you, then I'm going to lower my defenses and I'm going to be a little bit more willing to participate in my own healing process. Forgive me, Sean, what was your part 2 question?
So is a person who's abusive or aggressive, is that the same thing as violence, or what's the difference between those two things?
Any form of abuse is violent.
And give us some examples of abuse, for example.
No. So physical violence is one form. There's verbal, there's emotional, there's psychological, there's financial. So there's a lot of components to abuse. Physical violence is just one component.
And then, so when the person is actually doing these things, are they typically aware that they're doing something, or is it something that they're just falling back on a defense mechanism and don't really realize that maybe what they're doing could be abusive?
Sometimes they are, Sean, and sometimes they are not. And that's where the PTSD and the mental health disorders come in. And that's why, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We want to provide the appropriate interventions, because I'm pretty sure they don't like it either.
Misa, what you have to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, Sabrina has some really good points, and I think she's got it right. In addition, I saw a speaker at a conference that we had attended back in August, the International Trauma and Violence Conference in California. And a segment was presented by an individual who shared with us that he was using violence in his 20-some-odd-year marriage, right? And it was so interesting to me because in some, relationships are very complex, and unsafe and unhealthy relationships can be even more complicated. And, from this gentleman's perspective, and, it was one of the greatest insights that I've ever had. He said he grew up in a household that was very violent. And so that's what he knew in terms of how to keep order in the house, how to navigate conflict. And he understood that his behaviors were not healthy, safe, or good. And he said he genuinely felt apologetic after these incidents would occur, but he still accepted responsibility that, he had control over this behavior. He just wasn't aware, right, of the mechanics of how he was managing conflict. And so I think in some ways, if we look at the, more of the conventional model of an individual who uses violence, it's about power and control, right? And managing an individual or a situation. In the work that we do, what I've noticed is a big difference. It's not quite so clear cut. There's a lot of different factors involved in how somebody is engaging in conflict or conflict resolution in relationships. And to your question, does somebody always know? Something that I've really, and why it's just such a passion area for me now is, I have talked to a couple veterans recently. They don't even realize how they're being perceived. Like, even in their everyday normal lives, you've got these big guys, right? Like well over 6 feet, who have loud, commanding voices just when they're talking normally, like, having a conversation with somebody. But they don't have the self-awareness that, at a baseline, they're very loud and commanding. So if someone were to get upset, that could look pretty terrifying. And again, like, we've all mentioned over the last few minutes, all these other veteran-centric experiences or things folks are navigating can also impact how somebody is responding or really reacting to something versus responding.
And do you see a correlation where people sometimes get more violent or more abusive when they're in bad times, like say they lost a job or something horrible happened at work? And does that, those triggers as well? Misa?
Absolutely. A lot of environmental stressors, Sean, and generally that is what triggers individuals, veteran or non-veteran, because you get to your tipping point, and if you don't utilize coping skills, if you don't know how to, you're going to result to what you believe works for you.
Now, Sabrina, do you see a correlation also that, for people that grew up in, say, a violent household, like you just like Misa just described, of a gentleman that described how he grew up in a violent household? Is that a common thread with people that are abusive?
Not always. Not always. It can happen later in life. It's interesting you said that. I was speaking with a veteran at one time, and he was just saying, "Oh, Sabrina, I didn't even grow up like that. My mom, she was a single mom, but she was a church-going woman, and our household was calm." He said, "I learned this aggression in the streets." Wow. Yeah, and so it's not always the household. Sometimes it's your peers or your environment, because we're influenced by our environment generally.
Wow. I mean, so what are the warning signs? Say someone is experiencing domestic violence. What are the warning signs to maybe try to get that person to either seek help themselves or maybe even talk to someone you think might be abusive to get help?
Yeah, so we do a lot of talking to folks about red flags, right? Like what a healthy relationship might look like, what some warning signs might be, and what an unsafe or unhealthy relationship might look like. So, if things in the household are being controlled, if you're feeling isolated, if, you're walking around on eggshells and trying to keep everyone calm, if, there's a difference, especially in today's day and age. There's a difference between like texting someone all the time and getting like 200 texts a day.
Wow.
And needing to know your whereabouts at every time and what you're doing and what you're spending money on and who you're going out with. So those are some red flags that we would try to talk to somebody about in terms of, what more can you share with us in your relationship? And here's what might be helpful to be a little bit more aware of and how we and our community partners might be supportive.
So Mies, also tell me what brings a person to the point where they say, you know what, I really need help? Because what I see oftentimes, this is my own walk through life, is that oftentimes you have no idea who's actually going through this. What you see at work is not what you see. It's not what's going on necessarily in the household. And I've had people tell me stories, that you never would have known. You never would have known they were going through this type of experience. But then they don't do anything about it. They simply they sit in this experience. What makes them or gets them to the point to say, I know what I need to get some help. So if he's not going to get help or she's not going to get help, then I'm going to get help because I need to fix this some kind of way. What's the trigger to get you to that point? Yeah,
that's a very complicated question and answer. So, and I would love to get Sabrina's input too. So, that's one of the things that's on our myth list, right? That somebody may not be willing to get support, right? Or doesn't know that they need to get support or assistance.
Not to rush, we got about 30 seconds left. I should realize the time.
Okay.
Getting into the conversation, now we got to get out of here.
Yeah, so in terms of signs that somebody might need help, if somebody's missing work a lot, if they're wearing clothing that isn't appropriate for the weather, meaning long sleeves in summer, if they're not allowed to go out with friends or family anymore, or not allowed to attend their faith groups, or they're always giving excuses for an individual. And again, this isn't exhaustive. These are just some of the things that I think about. But sometimes people remain in relationships because they don't know what to do. They don't know services exist, or there's a lot of reasons, right? Like, they don't work. They need housing. They've got children. They need support. So there's a lot of reasons why someone might be hesitant to leave.
We got to stop because we just ran out of time.
Yeah.
But I think you give us enough information. We got to also have you back to continue this conversation because it's a very interesting conversation, a lot to get into. I appreciate both of you guys' times.
And can we leave a number, or is it too late?
Yes, go ahead, leave that number.
I just want to let everyone know to please contact the IPV team at 312-569-8603 if you or anyone veteran or non-veteran, is experiencing any form of intimate partner violence. I appreciate you, Sean.
Thanks for your time. America's Heroes Group will be right back. Welcome back to America's Heroes Group with our Roundtable and our partner, Community Outreach partner, Katz Milanec. October is Breast Cancer, Mental Health, National Disability, and Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Today is Saturday, October 14th, 2023. Our host is Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith. Our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scouts Honor Productions. And you know this voice, very familiar face on our screen, at least it's a picture of him anyway, is David Milanec. He's a CPA and president and founder of Katz Milanec and a military family member. And we're going to talk about the Monday deadline coming up for filing an extension. Let's talk about that. How you doing today?
Hey, Sean, how are we doing today?
Very good, very good. So Monday coming up, it's going to be the 15th of October. We have to get some extensions done. What if you miss the deadline? What is a consequence?
So the 16th of October is actually Monday,
okay.
But the 15th is normally the deadline. But because the deadline cannot fall on a Saturday, Sunday, or holiday, it gets extended to Monday the 16th.
Okay.
Now, if you, for some reason, still don't have your stuff together, one thing that we can definitely do to help you, if you call our office, 708-914-8220, again, 708-914-8220, if you call our office and get a power of attorney on file, we can pull your wage and income transcript from the IRS database. That's all the information that the IRS has on you. And by this time of year, it's filled out, everything's in there. So we can use that to put together your tax return. And you asked what would happen if you're late. So if you're late and so there's two things. If you have a refund and you're late, you're fine. You can still claim the refund for up to 3 years past the filing deadline. If you have a balance due and you're late and you file it on October 17th, the 5% failure to file penalty on top of the balance due. If it goes to November 1st, that 5% now becomes 10%. And each month or part of a month after that, it's going to be an additional 5% up to a maximum of 25%.
So what's the trigger for when the IRS gives you a nastygram and says, hey, you owe some money? How long does it take for that to happen?
So you remember that wage and income transcript I talked about just a second ago?
Mm-hmm.
So the IRS will take the wage and income transcript and they'll compare it to your tax return. And if they see documents on your wage and income transcript that aren't reported on the tax return, usually they'll have the computer do this, and the computer just spits out a notice called a CP2000 notice that says, hey, you owe money because you didn't report this income that we have on file for you. Now, when that happens, you've got a couple options. Option number one, you can just agree with the notice and pay it. Option number two, you can actually take a look at the notice and see what's going on with it, and potentially you can amend your return to reduce or completely eliminate the impact of that notice.
Now, how hard is it to do an amendment?
Well, they've made it a little bit easier in the past couple of years. The first thing is they've now made it possible to e-file some amended returns. You have to have filed the original return to electronically. You have to have e-filed the original return to e-file the amended return. But other than that, you have to paper file the return, and you have to not only put in the changes that you're making, but you also have to provide proof of those changes to the IRS. Otherwise, they're fully within their right to not accept it. So it becomes a little bit more difficult to do anything once you file the return and you have to file an amended return versus just filing everything on your original return, which is why having that power of attorney and getting that wage and income transcript can be very helpful.
And what are the most common things that you see when someone files a return but maybe goes back and says, you know what, I should have done this to get more money back. I didn't claim this. I didn't claim that. What are some of the things that people miss when they're filing on their own?
I mean, a lot of times people forget they had, little side gig type jobs. And those are businesses that you have to report business income or loss for. And you made a profit. You could potentially have a loss on that business, and having a loss on that business will actually generate a tax benefit for you, which then can potentially generate a refund. Another thing that can cause a problem in those situations is cancellation of debt. So if you get a 1099-C, a lot of people don't even know when they get a 1099-C. It's cancellation of debt. It's where, like, if the bank forecloses on your home, and you owed, let's say, $150,000, well, now the bank issues you a tax document that says they canceled your debt for $150,000. Now you have to pay income tax on that money. That can generate like a $50,000 tax bill by itself. Mm-hmm. There are ways to actually completely remove or eliminate that cancellation of debt income. Most people don't know how to do it. I know the code section it's under. It's Section 108. There are 5 different ways to do it. If you need help with that, definitely give us a call, 708-914-8220. But really right now, especially, I'm sitting in my office right now because I'm doing people's returns because we're so close to this personal deadline. It's really important. If you don't have your 2022 filing done, definitely get on the phone, give us a call. We can help you. We can get it completed as soon as possible, minimize the impact of any penalties for you.
So it's definitely a good idea if you've missed your deadline, because unfortunately somebody's probably sitting at home and they're going to be sitting at home on Sunday, maybe trying to figure out their tax return and maybe get it frustrated or get it mixed up some kind of way, and they're going to miss the deadline. You know, it's probably better to have someone that knows the tax code inside and out versus trying to navigate it yourself.
Oh, absolutely, because, well, for one thing, I just told you I can basically get the cheat sheet, right? So I can get all the documents that were reported to the IRS for you, and if you have a spouse, for your spouse. I can get all of those, with the exception of like 1 or 2 documents, but it's very rare that those situations come up. But basically, we can get everything from the IRS, and 9 times out of 10, we can prepare a tax return just off of that information. That will work for the IRS.
That sounds good. Have you ever seen a situation where a husband and wife normally file together and they haven't divorced, they haven't separated, and then one year for some reason, whoever is doing the taxes or taking the documents to the tax preparer, or maybe they do them on their own, just decides they're going to file single or married filing separate. So they're not filing together as a joint return. He basically files, or she files the return for herself, but forgets about the spouse, and the spouse has income.
Yeah, that has happened before. I am a very strong advocate. If you are married, do not file married filing separate, because that it eliminates a lot of tax credits. You don't get access to those tax credits. It takes away a lot of different tax benefits as well. A couple examples of that. You cannot claim a student loan interest deduction if you are if you're married filing separate. Another thing is for the child tax credit and the American Opportunity Credit, the thresholds actually get cut in half for what you're allowed to make before the credits start phasing out. So married filing separate is a very bad way to go. I almost always recommend married filing joint when you're married. However, there is actually a legal exception if for some reason the two parties separated and were living apart for most of the year, greater than 6 months of the year, and they have dependents. Each of them is legally allowed to file not married filing separate. Each of them is legally allowed to file head of household if they can each claim at least one of the dependents.
Okay. But the dependent has to be with you in the house for 6 months as well? How does that part work?
Yeah, you would have to have the right to claim the dependent, obviously. But if for some reason they were legally separated for more than half of the year, it is allowable to file that head of household status instead. Now, in doing that, you typically the IRS wants to see separate addresses. If you try to do that from the same address, you're probably going to get audited because it's not actually legal to do unless there's actually a separation that happens.
Now, a lot of seniors believe that when they start drawing Social Security or when they retire, that they no longer have to file a tax return. Is that true, or is that misinformation?
That can be true, and when I say that can be true, that's only true in the situation where the only source of income for that person is Social Security. If that person has any other source of income, and their total income basically exceeds like $13,000, it's whatever the standard deduction amount is for the year. If it exceeds that amount, then you have a filing requirement. Social Security is counted differently for that purpose. So if it's only Social Security, you don't have to file a tax return. If it's Social Security and like a pension for $10,000 and a part-time job for $5,000, well, now the income's exceeded $13,000, so now you have to file a tax return. It's really about that standard deduction filing threshold.
And even things
whether or not you have to file.
Yeah, so even things like, say, like a retirement income, you take, $5,000 or $15,000 out of your IRA to spend to live off of, or you're getting an annuity that's paying you money every year, or, like you said, it could be a pension that could draw you over that limit, where you have to basically file a return. And then are there certain benefits also? Because every now and again, I remember back in the day when Bush had that big, this was the son Bush, W. Bush, when he had that big tax refund that everybody got these checks in the mail for like $300 or something like that. Remember that?
Yeah.
So
kind of like the recovery rebate credit that happened the last couple of years with COVID.
Mm-hmm.
The seniors do get some benefits, like for the standard deduction. There's a small increase in the standard deduction amount that they'll get. It's like $14,000 something, almost $15,000, as opposed to the $12,950 for an individual. It's like an extra $1,800 or so. And then obviously you in the state of Illinois, actually, it's actually good to retire in the state of Illinois because the state of Illinois does not tax retirement income. So if you have a pension, your 1099-R, that doesn't get taxed. Your Social Security doesn't get taxed. No retirement income is taxed in the state of Illinois. So those are the big major tax benefits, at least in Illinois, for being over the age of 65.
Now, tell us about a little bit about some of the things you see that are important to business owners. So they have some things they got to think about too before the end of the year. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, now is an optimal time for tax planning for next year, right? Mm-hmm. Because I mean, you're approaching the end of the year. You're kind of starting to get a good idea of what the whole year is going to look like. And you're getting to the point where I'm sorry?
You're starting to plan for the next year, so things they got to get, things you have to think about as far as, because at the end of the year, you're wrapping things up, but do you have all your deductions? Are you thinking about what you're going to do? Are you going to apply for a loan next year possibly, and maybe you need to show income?
Do we want to show more profit? Do we want to show less profit? If we want to show more profit, what's that going to require us to pay in terms of taxes? Mm-hmm. And when do we need to pay that in? Do we need to pay it in now? Can we wait? If we're sitting there on let's say $100,000 profit, we can go out and buy a $80,000 car, and now we have a $20,000 profit. And so we have a lot less tax liability to pay at that point. These are the kind of things that you can make decisions now so that when the start of the year comes around, you don't have to worry about your tax situation.
Wow. I think that's really critical. So many business owners out there, they really need to start thinking about this, because a lot of missed opportunities are at the end of the year when you're just thinking about this running out, just getting until December 31st, but then you're missing out on all these different deductions and things you could be doing to try to plan your taxes, because people don't realize that they can plan their tax liability as opposed to just letting it happen to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a pretty common thing in military circles about if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right?
Mm-hmm, that's right.
And that's that. It's the same thing for taxes as it is for anything else. I mean, if you don't have a good plan in place, how do you expect to be certain that come April 15th of next year, you're not sitting there staring down a $10,000, $20,000, whatever tax bill? I've seen it happen to people because they didn't plan appropriately.
One more time, what's your
number? And so they're what's that?
What's your number one more time?
Oh, yeah, 708-914-8220. Again, 708-914-8220.
So one other thing I wanted to get into. We have about 10 minutes left, a little bit less than 10 minutes. I wanted to get into this very important thing because this is also something that you do a lot of, and it's become a big issue because a lot of people have back taxes because they missed these deadlines, or something catastrophic happened and they panic maybe, and maybe they haven't even filed in a few years, but they know they have income they need to report. And then they get that nasty grant from the IRS that says you owe $40,000 in back taxes or whatever. What are some of the things that people can do to eliminate these large tax bills?
Well, the very first thing you want to do if you're in a situation like that is definitely give my office a call. I'll give the number out one more time, 708-914-8220. And the reason I say that is because I actually find that people that are in those situations, a lot of times they don't even necessarily know what's going on, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. They don't know what their situation is. They have this letter that says they owe $40,000, but that's it. They don't know if they filed recently. They don't know what they owe, if anything. And so what we do in those situations is we pull all of the records from the IRS database and we get that information so that we can basically break down, here's what you filed, here's what you haven't filed, here's how much they think you owe currently, and then most importantly, and this is what we can do to solve this situation for you. Because we can come up with a plan at that point. If we have all that information, we can come up with a plan. And that plan can help you to potentially reduce or completely eliminate that debt. Ways that we can do that, we can file, if you have a substitute for return, we can file an original return for that substitute for return, and that can reduce the liability. We can file amended returns on original returns that have been filed that say that you owe money. We can file an amended return that says you owe less money. If those two options aren't in play, we can negotiate potentially an installment agreement with the IRS to help you pay it off. We can negotiate what's called a currently not collectible status, which allows you to avoid having to pay the IRS for a period of time. If you don't pay the IRS within 10 years of the assessment, they're required to write it off. And then there's also a program called Offer and Compromise that we can do. An Offer and Compromise is a contract between you and the IRS that allows you to pay a certain amount, let's say $500, and whatever your tax liability was is completely eliminated. Now, it has some requirements on the taxpayers, and the taxpayer is required to relinquish their refunds up to the tax year of acceptance, and is required to file and pay their taxes timely for the 5 years following the acceptance of the offer. But you can take a $250,000 tax debt, pay $500 with an Offer and Compromise, and it's gone forever.
Wow. That almost sounds like unbelievable. Like, so you have to go to court for that? Or does an attorney do that?
No, you don't. You don't go to court. It's actually a specialized unit of the IRS that you have to deal with. You send in your paperwork to them. They evaluate it. They have People, they have agents called offer assessment agents and offer examiners, actually. And those offer examiners will come back to us. They'll ask us a few questions. We answer the questions, and provided that everything fits the guidelines, which we know how to analyze that up front and know that answer before we even send in the paperwork. So provided everything fits the guidelines, they come back and say, okay, we're going to accept this offer. And then the taxpayer gets a letter in the mail. They pay off the offer amount. And as long as they comply with all the terms of the offer, they'll never have to pay that tax debt at all.
Wow. Now, I remember a case a long time ago. A friend of mine, and he's passed away since, but he was a senior, and him and his wife actually got divorced because one of them owed a whole bunch of back taxes. For some reason that they either didn't file correctly or she never filed some income that she had, and she owed a lot of money to the IRS. We're talking like those 40,000 plus tax bills. So they got divorced because they were getting ready to garnish wages, and he had income coming in. They were going to garnish his wages. So they divorced, but they stayed together. And for some reason, the IRS, they never went. She had no income, so they never really went after her. I think she had Social Security. Is that a common thing you've seen before, or anything like that before?
Yeah. So the one drawback to filing a joint return is if you have a liability. It's what's called a joint and several liability. Now, what does that mean? That means if you and your wife file a tax return together, or you and your spouse file a tax return together, you are responsible for the tax debt, and you owe $10,000. You are responsible for the $10,000. Your spouse is responsible for the $10,000. I keep saying wife because I'm a male, but your spouse is responsible for $10,000. If you pay $5 toward that $10,000, your spouse's debt goes $5 less. If your spouse pays $5 toward the $10,000, your debt goes $5 less. But the reason it's jointly and severally liable is because they can collect it from you, they can collect it from your spouse, or they can collect it from both. So even if you get a divorce, it doesn't eliminate tax debt.
Wow.
If you file jointly.
I read that in the book. Also, like as a mafia trick, they oftentimes get divorced when the feds are on their tail to try to save. They give the money,
if they filed separately during that time, which is one of the very few times that I recommend filing separately, is if you know your spouse is a criminal, file separately because then you can't get caught up in their stuff.
Makes sense. So tell us also, since we have a few minutes left, tell us what are some of the things that are really, really important you think everyone should know before Monday?
Well, the most important thing is don't panic. That's the most important thing. 1, don't panic. 2, if you have a refund, you have even less reason to panic because you can't get hit with penalties and interest. And number 3, if you've been delaying on filing because you don't have your documentation or you don't know what you have, call us, 708-914-8220. We can pull the records from the IRS and we can find out what you have so that you can file a tax return on time.
What was the biggest tax bill or tax miracle that you've seen in your career?
Well, I helped to get a company out of $800,000 of payroll tax debt through an offer in compromise.
Wow. So what did they end up paying?
They ended up paying a little over $8,000.
What? Whoa. It's like a 99%
absolutely 100% true.
Wow, that's crazy. So how do you get into that kind of liability? Is it because they just forgot to do something, or they just made a mistake in the paperwork?
Well, they didn't know that they had a filing requirement for payroll taxes, and so they didn't file their payroll taxes and they didn't pay their payroll taxes for a long period of time.
Every business, I don't care how small do you think you are, every business should have a CPA in their back pocket. You got to have a CPA. because you're going to have all these, especially when you have a small business, there's so many different little things you got to just know and do, and the government does not care that you didn't know about it. They're going to still come after you.
Absolutely. See it all the time.
Wow.
So if anybody needs help out there, give us a call, 708-914-8220. We can help you get filed before the deadline, help you plan for next year.
Thanks for your time. Always giving us some great information. Katz Milanec, appreciate you.
All right. Thanks, Sean. Have a great week.
That was Dave Milanec, CPA, founder of Katz Milanec CPA Incorporated. Go see him, talk to him, look at his website. He's there to help you. This is America's Heroes Group. We'll be right back. Stay.
Hi, this is Cliff Kelley, Vietnam veteran, co-founder, and host of America's Heroes Group. We have helped hundreds and thousands of veterans find the resources they needed to move on past trauma, find the services they need to heal, find training, jobs, and housing. That's our mission. To support this mission so that we can continue our work and have even more veteran stories of overcoming and success, we need your help. Right now, please consider making a donation to America's Heroes Group. Dig deep and give what you can to support this mission and help those veterans in need. You can donate through Chase Bank's Zelle app by adding America's Heroes Group as a recipient with our phone number 312-804-5831. You can donate through PayPal on our website, americashg.org. From the home page, go to donations, or you can go straight to www.americashg.org/donations. And finally, you can send a check to America's Heroes Group, Inc., 155 North Quaker Drive, Suite 4250, Chicago, Illinois, 60606.
We have in our Chase bags, we have a care package of hygiene, we have shaving equipment, we have razors, and for the women we have the same personal hygiene items for them as well. And we want to say thank you for their service. This is Chase Bank. Thank you very much. People in the neighborhood, free haircuts, free service, free food. Look good. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Thank you. Okay.
On behalf of Cliff Kelley, America's Heroes Group, we sincerely thank Chase Bank for coming where it matters to help homeless veterans have a hot meal today and a care package. We are sincerely grateful for this partnership. Yes.
Welcome to America's Heroes Group. Hear your voice where we connect the disconnected intentionally.
Who is Cliff Kelley, the governor of talk radio, the icon of radio throughout the world?
Chauncey Spencer II and I, again, share a special relationship. His late great father, Tuskegee Airman Chauncey E. Spencer, took me as a child on my first airplane ride.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is something that people need to see. Often we don't, do the things to show how great our people are. It changes the paradigm of how people think about us, about the collective consciousness of what it means to be us.
And we've been having great conversations about trying to get more African Americans into aviation. And we got a bill that we're trying to get passed that would allow the Pell Grant to be used to help finance aviation education.
This is where I started with this entire conversation by saying, if it were not for America's Heroes Group, I would have given up. So I want to get all my accolades out the way on behalf of America's Heroes Group. Ms. Glenda, thank you. Thank you for encouraging me to press on. I would encourage you all to support this organization. One thing for sure, America's Hero Group is out there. Ms. Glenda will take the time. Ms. Glenda Smith will take the time to listen to you and to steer you in the direction that you need to go.
Thank you for watching another episode of America's Heroes Group, where we provide education about resources and information for our veterans, military, and their family.
Hi, this is Cliff Kelley, Vietnam veteran, co-founder, and host of America's Heroes Group. We have helped hundreds and thousands of veterans find the resources they needed to move on past trauma, find the services they need to heal, find training, jobs, and housing. That's our mission. To support this mission so that we can continue our work and have even more veteran stories of overcoming and success, we need your help. Right now, please consider making a donation to America's Heroes Group. Dig deep and give what you can to support this mission and help those veterans in need. You can donate through Chase Bank Zelle app by adding America's Heroes Group as a recipient with our phone number 312-804-5831. You can donate through PayPal on our website, americashg.org. From the home page, go to donations, or you can go straight to www.americashg.org/donations. And finally, you can send a check to America's Heroes Group, Inc., 155 North Quaker Drive, Suite 4250, Chicago, Illinois, 60606. Hi, this is Cliff Kelley, Vietnam veteran, co-founder, and host of America's Heroes Group. We have helped hundreds and thousands of veterans find the resources they needed to move on past trauma, find the services they need to heal, find training, jobs, and housing. That's our mission. To support this mission so that we can continue our work and have even more veteran stories of overcoming and success, we need your help. Right now, please consider making a donation to America's Heroes Group. Dig deep and give what you can to support this mission and help those veterans in need. You can donate through Chase Bank's Zelle app by adding America's Heroes Group as a recipient with our phone number 312-804-5831. You can donate through PayPal on our website, americashg.org. From the home page, go to donations, or you can go straight to www.americashg.org/donations. And finally, you can send a check to America's Heroes Group, Inc., 155 North Quaker Drive, Suite 4250, Chicago, Illinois, 60606.
Welcome back to America's Heroes Group, this time with our roundtable and our partner, NWVU, that's the National Women's Veterans United. October is Breast Cancer, Mental Health, National Disability, and Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Today is Saturday, October 14th, 2023. Our host is Cliff Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host, Army National Guard veteran. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith. Our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scout to Honor Productions. And you have our familiar voice again, Rochelle Crump. She is our partner and a U.S. Army veteran, founder, and president of the National Women's Veterans United. How you doing, Rochelle? Can you hear us, Rochelle? Or while we get her on the line, I'm going to introduce our next guest. She's enlisted in the Army Reserve in 1975 and went into full-time active duty in 1985, serving the regular Army for 4 years. In 1990, she received her honorable discharge from the New Mexico Army National Guard with a service-connected disability. Though she left military service, she continued to serve our country and our veterans as a Chapter 14 member of the DAV, and was honored with the DAV's Bonnie Anderson Award for Outstanding Service in 2014. This year, 2023, she was elected to lead the DAV. With us today is the newly elected National Commander for more than 1 million member DAV, Nancy G. Espinoza. How you doing, Nancy?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
I'm doing well. And I also want to acknowledge our
Great.
Indiana Chapter 17 in Indiana. Bob Karnick has been with us for a long, long time. Has said great things about the DAV. And he always, talks about some of the wonderful things you guys do. Tell us about the DAV, your mission, and also what is the DAV all about?
Sure. Thank you for that. DAV has been in existence for over a century, and our mission is to empower veterans to lead high-quality lives with respect and dignity. And DAV does this in many ways. One of the ways is by having our professional advocates across the country work with veterans each and every day to obtain benefits they've earned. So by filing claims, encouraging them to go to the VA for medical assistance. We also fight for the interest of America's veterans on Capitol Hill. So we advocate for a lot of legislation, including the PACT Act that just recently passed.
Great. And thank you so much, Commander. We appreciate you, and we're very proud of you on behalf of the America's Heroes Group and the National Women Veterans United. Congratulations on your new and historic position as the commander of the Disabled American Veterans, known as DAV. Your election as the commander was timely for the National Hispanic Heritage Month as the first Hispanic woman in over a century, and also the second woman in over a century to take the leadership of the DAV as the commander. And as Sean noted, over 1 million members. We're very proud of you. And we just want to say that you have a very important role as the leader of one of the largest male-dominated veteran organizations across the nation. How does that feel, and what is the most important agenda for you from this appointment?
Thank you for that, Rochelle, and I am honored to be the leader of DAV as the second woman to lead DAV in its history. My mission right now is to empower all veterans to lead high-quality lives, like I said, especially women veterans. And one thing DAV has done over the last several years is to encourage women to come forward and get the benefits they need. If you look at our website at dav.org, we have a special area for women veterans, dav.org/women-veterans. In 2014, DAV created a comprehensive survey of what women face when they return from active duty or from deployments. So there were several recommendations in that report in 2014 to both veterans and the VA to encourage welcoming women into the VA hospitals, into clinics, realizing that women served as well, and not to be treated as a man or be called Mr. or assume that we're the wife when we come to the VA. There was also another report in 2018 that DAV did, and that one was talking about what resources women need, just in general, whether it's maternity care or awareness for mammograms that women need each and every day. And having served in the military, women have a higher instance of these diseases or illnesses, and preventive care is the main thing that we're looking at serving veterans, making them aware of what's available to them. Now, in 2023, DAV is going to do another report on women veterans. This one is going to emphasize mental health and suicide prevention. So DAV has always had women veterans in their thoughts as needing coverage and benefits and all of the services that they earned. Now, women are becoming the greater majority of veterans that have served. We're up to, so we have quite a few women veterans. We're a growing population. And the VA needs to be welcoming to us as well as to provide the services specific to our gender. And maybe it's our size or something that we need specific to our anatomy. So, but DAV is right there on the forefront with legislation. I'm sure you've heard of the Deborah Sampson Act that passed.
Yes.
Which gave VA the resources they needed to create the Women's Health Center. And they have someone that leads women's health throughout the VA system. So there have been many legislative things that have passed to benefit women.
Ms. Espinoza, can you tell us who Joe Delfino Espinoza was and what he meant to you?
Sure. Joe Delfino Espinosa was my father. He was an Army veteran. All my life he was in the Army. He served 20 years. He joined in World War II, during World War II as a 19-year-old. He also worked with the Monuments Men and served in Germany 4 tours, but early on in his career, he guarded a painting that went back, a Leonardo da Vinci painting that went back to Poland after the Nazis had stolen it. He was my guiding star, if you will, for what I would do later in my life, serving veterans. Realizing that my father died while he was in military service, and I see so many veterans struggle with health care, or maybe it's they're a minority, or women veterans that are underserved and underappreciated. And he was always the one that encouraged me to reach out and help. And that's what I've been doing most of my life with public service.
Wow.
And I continue that with DAV.
Wow. And you have a lot of family members that join the DAV, is that right?
Yes, 2 uncles. My Uncle Fred was a Marine veteran, served in World War II in Saipan, and he's the one that encouraged all of our family to join VAV. So when I think of Uncle Fred and my Uncle Benny, who volunteered with the VA for more than 20 years doing military honors, part of the DAV transportation program, giving veterans rides to and from their medical appointments, and he served volunteering until he was in his 80s. Wow. Doing military honors for veterans.
Wow.
So those are the examples that I follow in my life.
Wow. Tell us more about the benefits of the DAV for people that can benefit from the DAV. Why should people be a member?
Sure. Now, people don't have to be a member to take advantage of our benefits advocates. They'll help any veteran free of cost to obtain benefits. So the main thing about becoming a member is to join our voice and join our force, both in providing benefits, claims to veterans. A lot of people do that just on a volunteer basis. We train them and educate them on what forms are required. We also have a full-time staff of national benefits advocates in just about every state in the United States, for sure. And they review those claims to make sure they're correct and accurate. And our members have several advantages with DAV. Number one, they are the first to learn about our advocacy, what laws we're working on passing. Every year we have policy goals that we encourage our veterans to discuss with their local legislators, senators, and representatives, because as they say, all politics is local. So if we want to start something benefiting veterans, we can start that at the local level and then grow it all the way to our national politicians and encouraging them to support veterans legislation.
Now, Rochelle, you started.
And thank you so much. One of the things that I've always had concerns about were taking the claims. how many, or I'm sure, there are a lot of them, but how many women veteran service officers do we have? I know that may come, you're maybe not sure for that, I don't know. But, that's really important as we file claims and as they, pour out all of those things that have harmed them and want to have that touch of a woman pretty much a lot of times when they want to tell their stories or they want to tell what happened to them in order to get their VA benefits. And I know that here in Indiana, I'm in Illinois, but Indiana has been a great advocate for veterans. We partnered with them several times for conferences, and they have just been one of the best VAVs, I think, probably, that are near you where you are. So how do we ensure that those women, get with those service officers pretty much that have what it takes for them to be able to talk to them and get out the information they need in order to get their claims?
I understand that concern, Rochelle. Women that have been affected during their service with MST, military sexual trauma, may not want to work with a male service officer. The cadre of professional advocates, the full-time advocates that we have, there's more than 250 in the United States. And I would say the population of women is growing. The last meeting I went to, there were probably, maybe a quarter were women. However, if there is not a woman advocate in your area, that can be transferred your case, or you can work with the National Service Officer in a different area who is a woman. DAV is not opposed to allowing a different officer work with you for the comfort of your claim, your comfort in obtaining your benefits. So that can be done over the phone, over Zoom. There are many ways to accommodate women veterans. Now, here I'm in Utah, and we've had several women full-time national service officers. We do have volunteer chapter service officers, which is the local benefits advocates, and they can work with the veterans as well. But I would say what DAV does to accommodate and make women feel comfortable, the more women we get in there, the more women will have the camaraderie they're looking for with their counterparts, their sisters in service, and not have to, there's always going to be men because men are the majority of the military, as in my lifetime, for sure. Yes. But we're growing and we're showing our influence. And I am just so proud to be the national commander right now because it's timely. It's time for us to show that national veteran service organizations are paying attention to women's needs and the women veterans. And they're the ones that we're encouraging to join DAV. Of course, we're encouraging everyone of all ages and all services and all wherever they served, right? So we want all veterans to join DAV so that we have a louder voice. Right now, we're, like you said, over 1 million members. We also help more than 1 million veterans a year with their claims.
Wow.
So it's not just our members, it's all veterans that we're serving. We also have job fairs, both virtual and in person, where people can come and meet with employers that are looking for the skills that veterans bring to the table. When we're in the military, we learn to work as a team. We learn leadership. We learn perseverance. Sometimes an employer wants a very dependable employee, and those are veterans. It's also open to veteran spouses, whether it's a woman veteran or husband or a man veteran and his wife. They can all benefit from
Yes.
our job fairs, and those are found at jobs.dav.org.
Yeah.
Now, we also have a Patriot Boot Camp a project where we hold Patriot Boot Camps for entrepreneurs, people that want to start their own company. Maybe they don't want to go to work for a corporation. You know, they want to be their own boss now that they're out of the military. So both any veteran and their spouse can attend Patriot Boot Camp and be mentored by other entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs that have started their own companies, built them up. Robert Irvine, he's the chef that has participated in Patriot Boot Camp, and they get high caliber mentors. So DAV offers a lot of benefits to veterans. Now, as members, it would be good if they would all join us to be a louder voice for veterans.
Yes.
We've got about 10 seconds left. Can you tell us how people can donate to the DAV?
Go to DAV.org, and there is a menu option to help or I need help, either way. But please donate to DAV, join DAV, whatever you can do to help your fellow veterans. We're there, and we're welcoming to all people, all veterans.
Thanks for your time, Rochelle Crump, U.S. Army veteran, founder and president of the National Women Veterans United, and also Nancy G. Espinoza, newly elected commander of the DAV. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. And let us know if you come to Illinois. We'd really love to see you.
I sure will, Rochelle. Thank you. Take care.
Great.
Also, a special shout out to Bob Carnegie from the DAV Chapter 17 in Indiana. America's Heroes Group.
Yes.
We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Cliff Kelley, Vietnam veteran, co-founder, and host of America's Heroes Group. We have helped hundreds and thousands of veterans find the resources they needed to move on past trauma, find the services they need to heal, find training, jobs, and housing. That's our mission. To support this mission so that we can continue our work and have even more veteran stories of overcoming and success, we need your help. Right now, please consider making a donation to America's Heroes Group. Dig deep and give what you can to support this mission and help those veterans in need. You can donate through Chase Bank's Zelle app by adding America's Heroes Group as a recipient with our phone number 312-804-5831. You can donate through PayPal on our website, americashg.org. From the home page, go to donations, or you can go straight to www.americashg.org/donation.
Welcome back to America's Heroes Group, this time with our Roundtable and our partner, Veterans Legislative Voice. And the Veterans Legislative Voice podcast and our AHG correspondent, Stephanie Collada. Today is Saturday, October 14, 2023. Our host is Cliff Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith. Our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scott's Honor Productions. And, of course, U.S. Army Sergeant First Class, Reserve Sergeant First Class Veteran, founder, creator of the Veterans Legislative Voice, and our AHG correspondent, Stephanie Collada. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm happy to be here for this month at least.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world. But tell us, there's something, there's a person that that you want to talk about, and I think she's a really remarkable Marine combat veteran. Did a lot of great things and is responsible for a lot of things, positive things that are in the world today, especially pertaining to veterans. Tell us who the person you want to talk about is, and also the act is named after her.
Yeah, so I'll preface this because it's October and it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. That's what the subject is really going to be about, and this is for Dr. Kate Hendricks Thomas. She was a Marine. She's been deployed twice to Iraq, and one of the places was Balad. And she became a really huge advocate for mental health, for physical health after she got out of the Marines. And when she was 38, she was told by her doctor at a annual exam, you know what, I know the places you've been to. Let's get you a full spectrum check, including the breast cancer screening. She wasn't 40 yet. And so typically on most breast cancer screenings, you will get tested at 40 if you have a family history of breast cancer. If not, you wait until you're 45. And this is for everyone, civilians and veterans at this time. And at 38, she was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. And she passed last year, and so there was a bill that was created in the last congressional session called the Dr. Kate Hendricks Thomas Service Act. And what it does is that it adds the eligibility for veterans, both male and female, to get tested for breast cancer screening if they were deployed to any of the post 9/11 in the Gulf War areas. So if you went to Iraq, if you went to Kuwait, if you went to Afghanistan, you were in the Gulf War, any of those operations, you qualify for breast cancer screening despite your age. So you could be 24 right now, just came back from Iraq or Kuwait, and you can get tested right now.
I think that's really, really powerful. And she was a doctor of health education and promotion, and also author, professor, academic researcher. She did a lot of outstanding things, and was a real big advocate for health, like you mentioned, mental health and also physical health. She wrote a book with David Albright called Bulletproofing the Psyche, and then also another book out there which is on Amazon, Brave, Strong, and True: The Modern Warrior's Battle for Balance, which is also a great book. And Sally, her younger brother Matt, was also a Marine and was killed by an IED in Iraq. So I mean, it's just a heartbreaking story because she was just without this act itself. She was a trailblazer and was a person who was really making a lot of changes in the world and doing a lot for veterans and people in general. Tell us about the importance of catching breast cancer early.
Oh my gosh, it's so important. So military women, they have a 20 to 40% increased risk of breast cancer compared to the civilian population. So that it's so important for military women and veteran women to get tested now. Very recently, I found out that the third woman that I served with had just got diagnosed with breast cancer. So I went on my own Facebook and just started cold DMing, cold messaging all the women that I know that had been in service with me and probably under the age of 40. And I'm like, okay, go get tested now because of this act. Because it's so common that it would happen. Actually, 2 of the 3 women that I know are not even 40 yet.
Wow.
And they don't have a history of breast cancer. They don't have any of the markers. And it can just be so scary. The other thing about it is that it is common even just for, it is not common for women under 40, civilian-wise, to actually have breast cancer. But the thing is that if they do have breast cancer, they are more likely to have it to be a higher stage and a higher rate of fatality because it went on without detection, because they weren't getting screened, because they were so young.
I think she described it, Ms. Hendricks Thomas described it as their doctor said she looked like she had been dipped in a vat of cancer or something like that. They found it metastasized so bad that it was pretty much all over her body.
Yeah, it was like she was just dipped in radiation or she was dipped in acid because of that. It's so crazy. Because she used to talk about in Balad that she used to actually run and do laps because crazy thing a lot of people probably don't realize, but they don't have to make you do PT tests in the combat zone, but a lot of times they will. make you to do a PT test while you're in a combat zone. So a lot of people keep up their physical fitness. And so she used to run laps in Balad with all of the burn pits that was happening there. And she used to just blow her nose, and it just would be black coming out. And I had similar experiences. I just recently found out from when I was in Kuwait and where I was at, the location that they were at was highly hazardous and would be against every EPA regulation that would be there. And I spent 17 and a half months there, working about 14 hours a day. And the crazy thing is that they deemed it that it was too hazardous to live there, but probably not hazardous enough to work there.
Makes no sense. That's so
crazy. Scary. Yeah, and so it's so common for so many people. When I was just looking up for lung cancer, for example, for veterans that have applied for claims, lung and respiratory illness related, 40% of all that probably have been deployed to Iraq and Kuwait and Afghanistan area have filed for a claim because of respiratory issues, because of the burn pits that's been burned. And so that we don't really realize how much it could affect everything else in your body. And for women, it's really scary because breast cancer can be one of those things that can be affected.
Wow. So there was one thing nice about what she was doing also, too, is that her service for helping particularly veteran women, transition back into civilian life. That was one of the big parts of her journey and her work. Talk about that a little bit, and also what your experience in walk was coming from the military, and also the concerns you have mentioned before about your health, which a lot of veterans have, even if they weren't deployed. It's because of all the things that you can come in contact with the backdrop of Agent Orange, the guys from Vietnam, and how the fight they had to go through to get treatment. Yeah. And it took really like 50 years for them to even get something like the PACT Act.
Yeah. I mean, well, no, that was for Agent Orange, the PACT Act. We were so happy just to get it passed, and it was nearly 20 years after, all of the operations have already started. So 20 years after we started sending people to toxic locations, we're finally recognizing the cancers that they have. It's so frustrating. And for she was a mental health advocate, Dr. Hendricks Thomas. She was a huge mental health advocate. And for women in the military, a lot of times, despite the fact that you may have served enough time, you may have been deployed to combat zones or non-combat zones, women veterans are less likely to identify themselves as veterans more than any other population, any other demographic that you can narrow it down to. Women are less likely to call themselves veterans. And one of the reasons why is because they are worried about being challenged that they are veterans, or whether they are veterans or not. When I retired from the Army Reserve, I went through a phase of I'm not going to follow any of the regulations. I'm going to dye my hair whatever I want. So when I went to the VA one time yes, when I got back from everything, and I went to the VA, and I had blue hair. And after COVID, you have now for the VA during the COVID pandemic, they'll have the questionnaire of, hey, have you been in touch with anybody with COVID? Blah blah blah. Blah. The questionnaire that we get. I've been asked, oh, you're a veteran, or are you a veteran? And I'm like, just because I have blue hair doesn't mean I'm not a veteran.
Right, exactly.
Come on. It's so crazy of those things that get challenged. I mean, I will admit I look younger than I probably am, or I probably look younger than I am, and I have passed pretty much younger, so maybe that's it. But then women are also like that sometimes too. When my women's clinic had a open house a couple of weeks ago, we had a lot of women actually met up, and we actually tried to shared information because we don't know any other women veterans. The crazy thing is about veterans that people probably don't realize is that you move around so much. You probably lose contact with people from your hometown, and you know so many people, but you know them across the country. Yeah. And you're less likely to end up where your hometown is. And so you don't know a whole lot of people that are physically near you. the great thing about social media is that you can have more contact with those people, which is great. But you know what? 20 years ago, you didn't have that, or excuse me, 15 years ago for most of you people. For those that weren't in college or didn't use MySpace, but so everybody else, you couldn't use that. And so one of the women that I spoke to at that women's clinic was, she had gotten out in 1977, and she had no idea about VA disability, that she qualified for VA disability, or that she was even a veteran. She only found out a couple of years ago when she got laid off at 59. And she's like, well, I need to figure out how to make, more money or try to get some more money so I can live. And so she started researching, and she's like, oh, crap.
Wow.
And started applying and started finding out things because she was put in that position. And so many women are like that, and it's so scary. A lot of women that I've been told were actually told in the beginning, oh, well, if you're going to file for VA disability, you're actually taking benefits or the money away from the men that deserve the money for this.
Which is not true.
And so, right, they were gaslit and they were guilted into not actually applying for things that they rightfully earned.
That's one thing that she talked about as well, because the gender bias and sexism that exists in the military, and what she pointed out. She had a story that I remember one time. She said that she was an officer in the Marines. Okay, she's an officer.
Yes. Now
that has. For people that don't realize what that means as a civilian, an officer is almost like having like a person in Congress or a person or like the president, in your presence. It's not that they're not someone that you just, it's like you wouldn't insult your boss. You wouldn't insult like your boss's boss. That's kind of like how
they're like an office manager or a project manager type level. I mean, that's how high they are when they're just commissioned in their 20s.
Right, exactly. So she was serving overseas, and the guys under her leadership would put graffiti in the porta potties, and they'd put all these little sexual things about her. Like commenting on her, about her body, about her boobs, about her butt, whatever, stuff like that. Putting all kinds of sexual stuff, explicit sexual stuff about her. And she's using the same porta potty, and she's an officer. And so she carried around a spray paint can. And she didn't, she said she never went off anybody, or didn't, she kind of, because she didn't want it to, I guess, rock the boat, I guess, in a way. But she would have to spray paint the insides of the bathrooms for her own dignity. And I just found that was so crazy that I would never think about doing something like that to an officer. Period.
Right. And the thing, when I was around, and the crazy thing is that with me being enlisted, a lot of times they don't even realize that you're there, especially if you're a woman, because I'm just sitting here listening to these things being talked about, and you're actually more likely to hear the sexual harassment when you're a female enlisted person than you really realize, because they'll forget. And one of the things that had happened a lot when I was deployed was that they would call one of the other officers in my organization, and they would use the first prefix, and they would call her Madam, and then her last name, and actually try to spin off on a lot of jokes that she was a dominatrix.
Right. And
just went down that whole line. And I'm just sitting here, and I'm like, are you seriously doing this right now around me? Like, come on. Right. It's really degrading. It's really scary when those things happen, and it can really cause a lot of issues. The other thing about it is that a lot of women in the military also, you get so numb to it, is that you don't even realize it is sexual harassment. It'll still affect you, like sexual harassment does affect you, but you don't identify it as sexual harassment, and you don't realize it until much later, and you're like, oh, that's what it was. Okay. Because that stuff was just so common. It was so crazy when that stuff happened, and it just becomes so scary. And it's also scary because when there's sexual harassment happening, there's more likely to be sexual assault.
Right. And she was also she herself experienced domestic violence, I guess, when she later on in her life, which was, if you ever see her video version, she did a lot of TED Talks. That's why I learned a lot of information about her. She's a very commanding, very confident, very powerful person. Like, she's a person that projects, confidence and ability and capableness. But to find herself in a situation where she's experiencing domestic violence and didn't really know initially how to deal with it.
Yeah, because a lot of people didn't identify it or name it as domestic violence. A lot of people, when they're in those situations, like I've known for years what moral injury was, for example. I've known what this thing is. I never actually applied it to myself until I actually talked to a friend. I'm like, hey, I got triggered. Let me tell you what happened, and so we can work this out. And for information for those that don't know what moral injury means, I looked at the definition. It's when one feels that they have been violated, they have violated their conscience or moral compass when they're take part in, witness, or fail to prevent an act that disobeys their own moral values or personal principles. So it's an injury on your own moral self and everything that you identify and you feel and you hold true. I never actually called it that or realized it was that, and it was like 11 years after the fact. I'm like, oh my God, yes, that's the reason why I have these issues. And it's so common when those things happen, and so it's so important to look things up, and knowing who Dr. Kate Hendricks Thomas is so important. Please Google her, because yes, her TED Talks are amazing. She appears on many different news broadcasts as experts and correspondents. Before she sadly passed, she spoke a lot on many different subjects, and it would really be great to honor her for everybody to know, to learn about her.
Do you feel that the military is getting better with addressing sexism?
It's kind of hard since I'm not in. I'll admit that. It's kind of hard to identify that since I'm not in. But I will say in the veterans system, in the VA system, it is getting better. It is honestly getting better. There's some stuff that they have a lot to, improve on, but they are definitely getting better in that aspect. The reason why I won't say about in the military is because I'm not experiencing it firsthand. I won't go off things that I see in the news or I see one or two people, vent about online, because one of the things I hate about when people, the veterans especially, go off about how the military is woke or many other things that they're complaining about the military, but they haven't been in for 15 years. Like if you're not in, you don't know what's really going on and really being felt when you're in there. And so for me, that would be difficult for me to actually answer. There's a lot of things that they have improved: sexual violence, domestic violence. They've improved and they added more policies for suicide, for mental health. So I'll say that side, yes, probably. But the other thing that I'll also try to see as more of a identifier in that would be retention and recruitment numbers. If your retention is still the highest attrition rate is still women under the age of 24, then no. So it's a lot of different things that would give you a good, clear answer of that.
I think it's also really important that something like this passes, because people who do complain about the government and spending money, when you have when you have a preventative maintenance or prevention, basically to diagnose or detect cancer early, it's so much cheaper to do that than to treat cancer.
It is. It is so much easier to treat cancer. And you know what? That leads me into something else that I really want to talk about, which is actually what they can still be doing. They passed a really great law, Dr. Kate's law. They also passed one to get 3D mammography machines. Sorry. With my speech impediment, I have a hard time saying that one. So getting those machines into every VA. But the thing is that there's still so much more that they can do. And one of those things is what we've talked about a lot is PFAS and other toxic exposures that has been happening within the United States with soldiers and service members that have been stationed just in the United States. Because one of the things that the PACT Act and the Dr. Kate Hendricks Thomas Service Act leaves out are people that were or basically peacetime veterans in those that didn't deploy to those locations, because there's still toxic exposures that's happening. I mean, the Red Hill incident that happened in Hawaii, they're still doing studies, and we're still waiting on legislation to get passed so they can do more studies to find out how many were affected, what are they more likely to be affected with, and what's going to be the outcomes of their exposures. So with PFAS, for those that don't know, it's a firefighting foam that they use that actually has these forever chemicals that leach into water systems through the ground and go into the water. It's kind of like everything with Camp Lejeune that everybody has heard about with Camp Lejeune. It's similar to that, just a different chemical. So it's really highly found around airports, civilian airports, and military bases, because you know what? Military bases, one of the things that they do a lot of times, train. They train with the PFAS, with the firefighting foam, and that will just cause more firefighting foam to get to the water. And so we're just waiting for more legislation to get passed, so that, because there are links, there are studies that show that breast cancer could be developed because of PFAS, and we're trying to get the legislation passed so that peacetime service members and also those that didn't go to deployments, go overseas, can get covered for this as well.
The thing I don't like about these targeted legislations is that it should be a policy to me that you just get checked out for everything, because there's so many new things that come up. It's because one thing that I think people don't realize is because the Army and the military in general is getting more technological, we're coming up with always come up with new chemicals and new things and new compounds and new stuff that we don't know.
And then new cancers.
Right, and we don't even know what it does to the human body. They haven't tested a lot of stuff on the human body. They just we got this new fuel. It works really, really good. Didn't realize it's toxic, or how toxic it was, or we got a new firefighting foam, or we got whatever, a new type of bug repellent, whatever it might be. And that's how a lot of these cancers and these illnesses come out of, and it's going to continue. But if we keep cherry picking, like, okay, we're going to treat Agent Orange this time. We're going to treat burn pits this time. You should be able to. You should be treating everything.
The other thing about it is also the screening requirements. The screening requirements are so narrow that it can cause people and outliers to still fall out of that area and still be affected and fatally affected. A friend of mine that had sadly passed months ago was from esophageal cancer, and I'm pretty sure it was because of PFAS, because of the places that he and I were both stationed at. And around the same time that he had told me about the cancer, and he was stage 4 and he had already gone through a lot of treatment, I was already going through some issues with my throat and swallowing and same things. So I asked him, I was like, hey, were these your symptoms? And he's like, yeah, go to the doctor. I go to the doctor immediately. I get screened, and actually I get all the tests done that I ask. But then when the Dr. Kate Hendricks Thomas Act gets passed, I wait 90 days, ask for the breast cancer screening because of the act, and nobody's heard of it. Wow. And that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to talk about it, was because there hasn't been as much exposure as the PACT Act. And so I had to really push, and I got all the way up to the chief of radiology. I'm like, look, a lot of women need to know about this. I mean, men too, but women really need to know about this. And they finally were telling people about the act to get them to go screened despite their age. And the crazy part is, when I asked for my screening and the first person said, okay, I literally had to go through 4 more stages of fighting and informing people about the act until I finally got the mammogram. So it was a really interesting thing. And then actually the chief of radiology was the same one that did my own biopsy. Wow. So it's a small world, but the thing is that you just got to keep fighting and keep advocating for yourself, and you don't settle with no. And if anyone that has that issue and you get some pushback, go to your patient advocate. You have an issue with your patient advocate, go higher, ask for the supervisor, ask for the chief of the department, and go there. And then if you're not happy with those results, call your congressperson.
Once again, you should be no question at all. You should be able to go into a VA and get any screening for anything that you could possibly think of. They should be doing that automatically, just because, like I said, there's just so much stuff that we don't know about yet. We don't know what's going to happen to the vets coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan 20 years from now. We have no idea what's going to happen.
And I got pushed back after my first mammogram, because they were like, "Oh, you're young because your breasts are too dense." And I'm like, my grandmother was 82 with dense breasts before she died. Like, it does not have to do with age with my family. I'm sorry. So, I mean, that's not an excuse for me. I need a different answer from you now. Just keep pushing everybody, okay?
Wow. Once again, so the Dr. Kate Hendricks Thomas Service Act.
Yeah.
She has 2 books, Bulletproofing the Psyche with David Albright, and she also wrote Brave, Strong, and True, The Modern Warrior's Battle for Balance. Check those out on Amazon. You can buy those books. Also, check out her TED Talks. She had a lot of stuff out there. Any final things you want to say about her?
Oh, my goodness. Also look up the Athena Division. There is a group that actually was doing photo shoots for women, the Grace Project, and they actually did take photos of Dr. Kate Hendricks Thomas before she passed. And they also do a ton of beautiful portraits of women that have been gone through breast cancer. And it's so powerful and so beautiful at the same time.
I have one question I wanted to ask. I've been meaning to ask you this question for a long, long time. In 10 seconds, and I think I asked you this question once before, but I wanted to see if your mind has changed. If you had a daughter, would you let your daughter join the military, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, clear enough.
I would train her and help and prep her, because I've been working on a book for a while of how to survive the military. But that would be one of the things. It'd still be yes, and I still recommend it. It's just you need to know the left and right limits on everything.
So don't leave. We're going to send out the show because we have a few things to go over first. So make sure, the audience, that you check us out at americashg.org. We just revamped our website. It's all brand new and shiny, and it's got a lot of cool information about us, and also about our past shows. So you can check out our past shows, also our Facebook page, our YouTube page. Reach out at info@americashg.org. That's our email address. Email us any questions you might have and things you want us to talk about so we can stay connected and also relevant in your life. And also, if you want to reach out to us by phone, you can call us at 312-803-2618. That's 312-803-2618. Once again, our email address is info@americashg.org. That's O-R-G. So send us out. Stephanie?
All right, guys. So keep fighting. Love everybody. And look up everything that you need to know. Have a good weekend.
This is America's Heroes Group. See you next week, 4 to 6, as always. AM 1690 WVON in Chicago.